Hello everybody, welcome to another weekly session, and today's weekly session will be covering how to perform data preprocessing. Not exactly because this particular topic is quite vast in itself, extremely vast, so there's a hell lot of things you can do in data preprocessing, but I found this particular article a good summary and overview of what are all the data preprocessing techniques, and this summarizes the steps quite well. So why not discuss it? Another article which we would be discussing would be data augmentation in Python. This would be quite interesting and useful. Both are quite interesting and useful, but let's go through them one by one. So the first article of the day is data preprocessing guide or overview, basically a good overview. This is all purpose, what exactly is data preprocessing and those kind of things, but let's get to the main point. First is handling missing values. There are few methods of handling missing value. Drop the samples with missing values. Replace missing values with zeros, missing values with mean median mode, interpolate the missing values, extrapolate the missing values, or build a model with other features to predict the missing values. Now let's talk them one by one. More or less, she has listed all the items, but let's get them one by one. So drop the samples with missing values. So let's say if the number of samples to be dropped having missing values is less than 10% of the total data set, then this step is feasible, else is not a recommended step, because this leads to a huge data loss, heavy data loss. So even if you're losing 10% of the data, that's a huge amount. Now getting to the second point, which is replace missing values with zeros. Now this particular thing is not exactly quite is quite limited in some of the scenarios. So in some of the scenarios, like let's say if a sensor generates temperature values and the data sets belongs to a tropical region, in most of the cases missing values are populated zeros. So temperature or sales or those kind of things in which making 0 is a sensible number, you can replace the missing values with 0. Coming to the second point, replace the missing values with mean median mode. So let's say you're replacing something, a statistical pattern, then what you're going to do is, let's say if you want to replace something, let's say age or score, that can be replaced with mean. A better metric would be median, because that takes into consideration the outliers. Mode is another aspect. Suppose you want to replace it with the most frequent observation, that also makes sense, then you can use mode. Interpolate the missing values. Interpolate helps to generate values inside a range of for instance, if there are 9 missing values in a column with values 0 and 10, interpolation will populate the missing values with the numbers from 1 to 9. Understandably, the dataset needs to be sorted according to a more reliable variable. Extrapolate helps to populate values which are beyond the given range. And this particular is usually random forest. This method, the last point is, we use random forest. And using the random forest, you're able to understand. You train a model. So a random forest with a target value would be the column having missing values, and everything else would be training data, would be the features. So target would be the column having the missing values, and everything else would be the training features. You train a model and you predict the missing values. It's more or less a brief summary. Now let's move on to the second topic, which is scaling. What exactly is scaling? What exactly is scaling? Scaling is different columns can be present in different ranges. For example, there can be a column with a unit of distance, another with a unit of currency. This is basically scaling. So in terms of basically when you're trying to optimize gradient descent, it would take gradient descent longer time to converge if not scaled, so we perform scaling. Now let's move on to different techniques: min-max scaler, standard scaler, robot scaler, max app scaler. We know all about this, so let's skip over this. Now let's come to the outlier treatment. Outliers are data points which do not conform. Everybody knows what is outlier, and we know this particular box plot. So it is 1 quarter 3, and this is the quarter 1 plus 1.5 IQR, and this is quarter 1 minus 1.5 IQR. Anything beyond these two lines are considered as outliers. Now let's jump to feature encoding. Dimensionality reduction is a lot. So let's talk a bit about feature encoding. What exactly is feature encoding? So you might have to perform encoding for data which is in string format or even in numerical format. So label encoding, everybody knows, like you are assigning 1, 2, 3 in a sequential manner where the order matters, right? So let's say student grades can be label encoded, or salary grade can be label encoded, seniority grade can be label encoded, one hot encoding. So when the data has no inherent order, you need to perform one hot encoding. Where the order is not important, one hot encoding. Binary encoding, something new. I have not ever learned about binary encoding. Let's see what is binary encoding. This solves the bulkiness of one hot encoding. Every categorical value gets converted to a binary representation, and for each binary digit, a new column is created. This compresses the number of columns compared to the one hot encoding. With 100 values in the categorical column, one hot encoding will create 100 or 99 new columns, whereas binary will create much less unless the values are too large. Base and encoding, similar to binary encoding, with the only difference of base. Instead of base 2 as binary, other base can be used. Now let's go to hashing. What is hashing? Means generating values from a category with the use of mathematical functions, but with a more complex function and fewer dimensions. So these are bit advanced versions of one hot encoding. These are bit advanced versions of one hot encoding and can be understood. Alright, so let's understand what is Bayesian encoders. What are Bayesian encoders? These encoders borrow information from the target variable and map them to the categories in a column. So this technique is of great use when the number of categories is significantly high. In such cases, if classic encoders are used, it will increase the dimensionality manifold and trouble the model unnecessarily. When the number features is extremely high, a problem called curse of dimensionality reduces the efficiency of machine learning models, since they are still not adequate enough to handle large volumes of features. What is target encoding? So the mean of only those rows in the target variable that are considered to a certain category is mapped to the category. Data leakage must be taken into separate consideration. Okay. Target encoding is process of replacing categorical with the mean of the target variable. And why would you use this? Target encoding introduces loss in the encoding of the categorical variable, and naively applying target encoding can allow data leakage, leading to overfitting and poor predictive performance. Let's see how it is done. Target is any encoding that replaces the features categories with some number derived from the target. A simple and effective version is to apply group aggregation like mean. So these were the targets, and take the prices, average the prices. Now this is the price. How does it help? This kind of is also called as mean encoding. Apply to a binary target, it would be bin counting. Smoothing is one thing. So let's understand, when is target encoding even beneficial? Is a Bayesian encoder basically is a fast way to get most of your categorical variables with Lifford. Idea is quite simple. This. Alright. Leave one out encoding, similar to target encoding, but it leaves the value of the current sample with while calculation of the mean. Good enough. Weight of evidence encoding is a measure of the extent to which an evidence supports or negates a presumed hypothesis. Weight of evidence encoding is usually used to encode continuous variables with pinning technique. So these are various Bayesian encoding methods. Usually classic encoders are used, but if you want to use Bayesian encoding, you can use basically how the benefit it will increase the dimensionality. These encoders borrow information from the target variable and map them to categories in a column. This technique is of great use when the number of categories is significantly high. In such cases, if classic encoders are used, it will increase the dimensionality manifold and trouble the model unnecessarily. When the number of features is extremely high, a problem called curse of dimensionality reduces the efficiency of ML models, still not adept. So you can reduce the curse of dimensionality with the dimensionality reduction methods. That works. I mean, target encoding usually leads to overfitting issues, so better not to get into those kind of things. Feature creation and aggregation. Yes, feature engineering. We did discuss in one of our weekly sessions what is feature creation and aggregation. Dimensionality reduction is there. So if you have after pre-processing, usually dimensionality increases a lot. So you would love to reduce the dimensionality, and to reduce the dimensionality, there are multiple methods. So one of the method listed over here is univariate selection. So you do variance, you do correlation. Based on that, you select. So there are three methods: Pearson correlation, Spearman correlation, and Kendall's correlation. Simplest of all comes with a loss of assumptions. The variables in the question must be normally distributed and have a linear relationship with each other. Also, the data must be equally distributed about the regression line. It is based on the assumption that variables are measured on ordinal scale. It tracks the variability of a variable that can be mapped to the other variable. Okay. Mutual information solves the problem caused by the correlation. It effectively captures any non-linear relationship between given variables. This helps us eliminate the features which show no significant relationship with the target variable, helping us strengthen the predictive model. Okay, this is basically the chi-square test. So if you want to use a chi-square test, it keeps on taking consideration of multiple features in parallel, so that you get the better feature selection, those kind of things. And multivariate selection is you keep in consideration all the variables and work along with them. So forward selection is you start with one variable, then you add one, check the model performance. If it improves, keep that. If it decreases, remove that, and keep on adding. If you're 100, so this will start from 0 to 100, and you might end up with 80 features. Backward is you start with 100, and you keep on eliminating the ones which are not worthy of keeping, and that's backward elimination. Then we have recursive feature elimination, similar to backward, but it replaces the iterative approach with a recursive approach, greedy optimization algorithm. ANOVA, we know. ANOVA is quite famous. Linear discriminant analysis is usually used for categorical variables as well as for visualization purposes, LDA, t-SNE, those kind of things. Now, I think we have covered the topic good enough to a great extent. This is a good overview of what are the methods are there for data preprocessing, and it's quite handy. So you load the data. After loading the data, you would love to do data pre-processing, and this is something which would be of great use to you. So I think discussing this was worth it. I hope you learned and gained something. And if you did, please ensure that you hit the subscribe button. Alright, take care. Let's move on to the next topic. So let's resume to the next topic of discussion, which is data augmentation techniques, and specifically data augmentation techniques for images. Now, there are different kind of data augmentation for images which happen, be it geometric data transformation or color space, kernel based, or random erasing, mixing, cut mix, mix up, those kind of things. Those are quite recent these days, but those are the basic kind of data transformation techniques which we use for images. But if we want to talk about the specific technicalities, that's what the next 10-20 minutes, 10-15 minutes would be devoted to the specific data transformation techniques using the popular frameworks or the libraries. So first is TensorFlow data augmentation techniques. TensorFlow data augmentation techniques are quite simple. You can find them on QuickML library as well, implemented over there. So let's get started. This discussion is based on this blog article by Neptune.ai, data augmentation in Python, everything you need to know. Quite brief, quite succinct, and quite informative. So let's start off with the first article. So I've done a bit code work for you so that we save some time on the processing. So like as usual, this is just image loading and some utility works. So over here you can see TF image flip left right, and you can see the original and the augmented image. Now if you want to apply multiple layers of augmentation, you can do this. Just load the image and do pass them in a multiple sequence, and you finally obtain the output. Now this is useful. Suppose you have a trained dataset in the format of tf.tf.dataset, a hypothetical dataset. I'm not going to prepare one at this moment. Then what you can do is train ds.map this augment. Auto tune over here. Yeah, this is what you can do over here. Now, quite fascinating, but good enough. So what we can do is you can also add the augmentation as a layer. So rather than us doing this in the data set, you can also do this on the fly in the layer, or the third method is using a data generator. So you can use a data generator. You can use a data generator and perform the data augmentation techniques. Good enough. Now let's move on to PyTorch. PyTorch I've used once in a while, that is transforms. Hello. Yeah, I've used transforms once in a while in PyTorch. This is something like this. You have torchvision.transform.compose. You can have compose. You can mention the pipeline over here, TF random rotation, those kind of things. Pass the data to a pipeline, the things will happen on its own. This is quite good and informative, but yeah, that's how it happens. Just a second. Yeah. So in PyTorch, we have transformations, and those transforms are passed under compose, and that's how the data pre-processing happens. So you can also, the moment you normalize, you can also pass on those transformations and do things, different things, or you can use it in a data loader, those kind of things. But what's the interesting part, which we'll be discussing, are the data augmentation libraries, which are specifically built and designed for it, rather as compared to the frameworks. Frameworks have them as a utility, but these libraries, they are specifically and explicitly designed for them. So these are explicitly designed for such utilities and work, and that's the beauty of it. So first is Augmentor. Augmentor is a simple OpenCV based CB2 based data pre-processing technique, data pre-processing library, which provides the different features to augment your things and those kind of things. But which the most famous one is Albumentations, and it's a good balance between the speed and the number of facilities provided. And we'll be specifically discussing Albumentations. A quick example which I have over here of Albumentations is this. So you can see a transformed image. You know, let's discuss a bit more about Albumentations. Albumentation is quite elaborate in itself, covers a lot of field and explicitly the computer vision domain, be it image augmentation, mask augmentation, bounding boxes, everything. So if you check bounding boxes, it even covers those things. So what we are looking for is example Albumentations examples. Simple pipeline. Using with TensorFlow, using with PyTorch. I think these two examples are good enough. So this is the example which we took and modified a bit. So these are all the transformations which you want to do. And this one feature is quite impressive. One off. Either you want to do this or this, do that. One off, one off, one off. So let's use a one off. A dot one off, A dot one off. Albumentations on it. And select one of transforms to apply. Selected transform will be called with force apply equal to true. Transform probabilities will be normalized to 1. So in this case, probability of applying selected transform. Okay. Select one transform to apply, and then selected transform will be called with force apply equal to true. Then we have transforms probabilities will be normalized to 1. So in this case, transforms probabilities works at weights. Okay. Alright, so good enough. This was good. Let's test it out, this particular set of transformations. Nothing much. Good enough. Now let us move on to the next example, which is Albumentations with TensorFlow. So quite simple to use, I think. So one is using TF image, which I just showed you, and then another is a pipeline with the help of argumentations. You have this argumentation pipeline, then you have the augmentation. You get the data and you transform the data, get the augmented image. So these three lines are a bit different. So rather than directly transforming the image, you just need to make a dictionary wherein the image and the image is being passed, and then image goes to the transforms, then extract back the image. That's how it is. Quite simple, nothing much to be worried about. And if it's PyTorch, I don't think there's nothing to do, because it's based on top of PyTorch. On top of PyTorch, Albumentations is built. So this is the train transforms, and transform equal to this. Quite simple. I think this was a bit helpful. Coming to ImageAug, AutoAug, these are also gaining popularity, and these have their use cases. Everything now these days, everything is trying to provide each of the utilities, but this one is quite fast and efficient. That's why Argumentation gained popularity, and it's quite vast, covers exclusively all of the tasks in the computer vision domain. Now, concluding remarks, what augmentation should you use? So you should first test out, concluding remarks on this session, you should first test out the image by visualizing that what kind of augmentations would be good for your dataset. For one dataset, one augmentation set of augmentations might be quite beneficial and might have proven to improve the performance to a great extent. On the contrary, same set of augmentations might prove to be disastrous for a different dataset. So what to do is to visualize the output on sample of images, check out how the output would be. Once you get the understanding that this is what I want the output, and you're sure that the output you are obtaining is quite similar to the training dataset, and is not entirely a new image, then in that case you can proceed with your augmentation pipeline. That would be the concluding remark. Too many augmentations are sometimes not beneficial, too less augmentations are also not useful. Try to maintain the balance, and that's it. Alright, let's catch up in the next session. Hope this was quite helpful. Take care, bye bye, and ensure that you do hit the subscribe button.